Hi, my name is Sydney and I'll be speaking about increasing mental health programs in public schools to prevent school shootings. December 14th, 2012 was one of the most devastating days of my life and one of the most devastating days in the history of American education. Not only because the San Diego shooting was occurring down the road, but because, as my classmates reminded me, he was coming here next. 11 is a completely vulnerable age, old enough to understand what a threat a school shooting is, but too young to do anything about it. My mother was able to pick me up that day in lockdown because our principal simply couldn't say no to a mother trying to get her child home safely. The shooter never came to my school, and my classmates and I learned more that day about a shooting that happened minutes away to people that we knew from CNN rather than from our own administration. Why our school rarely spoke about that day for the rest of my education and never asked us how we felt about it is indicative of a silent issue in our country. Even though we were all perfectly safe on the day of the shooting, kids from my class have lasting school-related trauma from the event, and several have opted for homeschool. According to a study listed in U.S. News, similar to the anxiety felt by those living across the country on 9/11, students and young children can develop PTSD from school shootings, even if their own school wasn't affected. According to a study mentioned in Business Insider, America makes up just 5% of the world's population, but 35% of its mass shooters. Yes, these statistics are a hard pill to swallow. Yes, school shootings are never supposed to be embedded in our American culture, but they are, and there's no time left to pretend that they aren't. But right off the bat, I will admit that though improving our mental health programs is among the best ways of creating a safer school environment, it isn't the only or most obvious one. Can we imagine if the San Diego shooter's mother couldn't have ever even purchased the assault weapons, which he would later use both in the shooting and in killing her? After the Australian government banned assault weapons in 1996, there was a 22-year gap in mass shootings. According to a study conducted by Simon Chapman and Philip Albers, the chances of the gap being a coincidence are over 200,000 to 1. Australia's ban is a prime example of an effective assault weapons ban. However, it doesn't appear that American gun reform will be coming very soon. Though gun reform is equally important and should not be pushed aside, according to a study conducted by Homeland Security, preventing violence by detecting and addressing these behavioral red flags is more effective than any physical security measure. This, of course, only applies to student-led gun violence. Mental health programs can be improved in schools first and perhaps the most obvious way, recognizing warning signs typically associated with school shooters. Let's all remember the following statistic from clinical psychologist Allison Polini. 99% of all school shooters are young males. 78% of school shooters have attempted suicide in the past, and yet only 18% were diagnosed with a mental health disorder. At least 87% of school shooters underwent severe bullying, and only 7% of school shootings are impulsive, thus 93% might have been preventable. The large majority of school shooters are under the age of 20, which means many have not developed the necessary coping skills and need adult intervention. Ideally, schools should have multiple counselors fully prepared for shooter intervention, but sadly, the national school counselor to student ratio is 451 to 1, according to The Atlantic. Thankfully, creating better mental health programs is a community effort. School administrations can encourage families of students exhibiting such warning signs to seek off-campus support. Many families are not informed enough to understand that their children have a diagnosed mental health disorder. Additionally, in-school coping groups for students with mental health issues or violent urges has had a positive effect. Presentations on this topic are not only crucial in schools, but just as beneficial outside of schools, as parental ignorance is just as detrimental. Required readings on the direct impacts of bullying are also vital. Schools are more likely to have a police officer on staff than a school counselor, which is why we must ask ourselves, why is punishment so much more valued in our schools than prevention is? In the wake of the Parkland shooting, our president blamed mental health rather than assault weapons. The connection between mental illness and school shootings must be noted, but we cannot use mental health as a political ploy in favor of the NRA and then not do anything about it. 50% of the American population has a mental illness, and I would hope that we could all agree that it would be unreasonable to assume that nearly 200 million people are evil, dangerous, or deserving of being associated with the kind of people who shoot small children. According to a Psychology Today article, people with mental illnesses are more likely to shoot themselves than others. Associating school shooters with generally mentally ill people unsoundly vilifies and isolates them and puts more on the plates than they need. Of course, the Zodiac shooter killed both himself and others, but he does not represent the vibrant and diverse community of people with diagnoses. Blaming mental health is easy, and blaming mental health is also lazy. Planning ways to help mentally ill students is effective. I've avoided saying the Zodiac shooter's name because where I live, it's treated by the likes of a swear word. We don't utter his name or give him attention, but the older I get, the more I realize our public school system fails so many students, and I realize that we need to say his name. We need to study his story to prevent another troubled boy from becoming an Adam Lanza. As students, as parents, and as teachers, we need to check in on the students we interact with, even if they don't exhibit such warning signs, but simply just because every student needs help sometimes. Just a few years younger than Adam Lanza, growing up in the exact same street as him in Newtown, future killer Peter Macedonia was known by many as the opposite of Adam, a social, athletic boy who would grow up to be a fraternity brother at the University of Connecticut and a close friend of my sister's. It was a shock to his family and friends when he killed 2 people over the summer in a spree he modeled after Adam's. There is no perfect school shooter formula. We're continuing to find one. It is an extremely frightening time to be a student, and it is the absolute worst time to abandon our students and disregard their fears. Teachers need better mental health training. Every student needs mental health checkups, and communities can make this happen without the help of our president. School shootings are not inevitable. Giving up on trying to prevent them is giving up on our children. A child's life is worth more than the right to possess assault weapons. A child's life is worth the time and the money it will take to create better mental health programs. Thank you.